What's up, my friends? U.S. Army veteran ThatChrisChaos back again for another video. I missed you. Hopefully you missed me. If not, because you have no idea who the hell this guy is. It's understandable. It's understandable. But I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I create videos for you who wants to learn about the Army, even sometimes just the military in general. So if that's the type of thing you're interested in, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you are not already. Even think about clicking on the bell so that you can get alerts as soon as new videos go live, to include the live streams and become a part of that awesome notification platoon. But you're here because you want to know what are some of the pros and cons to being a single soldier in the United States Army on active duty. Now, you can also probably even look at this as pros and cons for a married soldier, because a con would now be a pro for married soldiers and vice versa. So technically you look at it that way, but we're gonna focus on the single soldiers, and if you wanna translate that into married life too, you could. Some people will tell you, do not go into the military, do not go into the Army married, because it'll ruin your marriage and you're gonna get divorced, and all sorts of other stories that people may have from maybe a personal experience, people they knew, whatever the case could possibly be. Here's the thing, I've seen studies and there is a slight increase in divorce rates for military individuals, but not as an extreme level that it's like, you're guaranteed that you're getting divorced if you join the military, you know, as a married soldier, married Marine, whatever the case is. No, it's not a guarantee thing. There is a slight increase, but not enough to say that, yes, guaranteed. No, it sometimes just depends on situations of individuals, what they go through, how strong their marriage was in the first place, and a lot of other factors. Now, enough of that mumble jumble at the very beginning, just kind of a little bit of pre-talk stuff. Let's kind of get into some pros and cons. I'm gonna kind of go back and forth between some pros and some cons. So let's start off with a pro of being a single soldier in the United States Army on active duty. The first one is going to be that you don't have to go to FRG meetings. And if you're not in the Army, then you have no idea probably what the hell FRG even is in the first place. So let me briefly tell you what that is. FRG stands for Family Readiness Group, and it's these groups that usually get together with a soldier, their spouse, to kind of talk about different programs, different ways they can be able to interact with the other families that are in that unit. So that way when their spouse that is the soldier deploys to maybe a deployment, or is gone for a long training exercise, or even just in garrison general, right, then they have this group to kind of reach out to for community activities or help with certain things or someone to talk to, those kind of things. So it's a lot of those kind of programs. So that's what the FRG is for. For married soldiers, it is common that it's required for them to attend these meetings. So especially if you have a deployment coming up or something along those lines, it's gonna be required that you go to this FRG meeting. They can't technically require your spouse to go, so if you're the soldier and you have a spouse that's a civilian, they can't make that person go, but they can make you go. So if you're a single soldier, you're not required to go to these things. I've seen in some cases where they make the single soldiers go too for the information, maybe for like their family back home, for like their parents or something like that. But that doesn't seem like like a big kind of chance of that happening or a common thing that happens. So it's nice that you don't have to go to those because they're after hours. That's why it's mainly a big factor, is that they're after hours. It's, outside of the unit. So instead of you being able to relax, unwind, play video games, whatever you want to do on your free time, you now have to go attend this FRG meeting for an hour, half hour, 2 hours, whatever the case might be. Next up, you have a con, and that is some of the restrictions of living in the barracks. When you're a single soldier, you're living in the barracks, unless you're an officer that's single or someone higher ranking that's single. But for the most part, you're lower enlisted, younger soldiers that are new into the Army, they're gonna be stuck in the barracks. And there's a lot of restrictions that come with the barracks. One big one of the many is that you can't have firearms in the barracks. So if you are someone who likes to go hunting, to go just shooting for fun, like, target practice or whatever, and you own a firearm, whether that's a pistol, a rifle, whatever the case is, you are not allowed to have firearms in the barracks at all. Now, I guess you can have a little bit of a shameless plug here, but a goat gun, right? These things are kind of fun, right? You got these cool goat guns. They're like, movable parts and everything like that, and they're pretty fun to kind of put together and put on display and everything. Got an affiliate link down below if you want to help support the channel and buy one of these cool things. Multiple types of guns available in there. So you can have those in the barracks, but not a real firearm. So you technically have to go through some different kind of ways of storing that firearm that does not include it being in the barracks. Some common ways is like if you have someone like a family member, maybe a really close friend that lives off base, then you could leave it with them. They can hold on to it for you. Some people maybe put it inside of a storage unit, but then you have to be careful because there are certain places as storage units that don't allow you to store firearms inside of a storage unit, so you have to make sure that's allowed. You can store it on base as far as like maybe you have a family member, a close friend, someone that you trust or whatever that lives in on-post housing. You can put it in on-post housing, but then it has to be registered with the provost marshal, which is like the MPs, the police office, you know, on the installation. So that weapon has to be registered with the provost marshal if it's gonna be on post. Again, not in the barracks, but you could do it in on-post housing. There's also another way you can do it, like you can store it in the arms room for there, but a lot of people don't like doing that because then that requires that to go in the arms room, and then if you wanna use it, then you have to coordinate with the armor to get it out at a certain time and then be able to put it back and everything like that. It's usually just a lot of hassle that nobody wants to deal with. Other things of restrictions in the barracks is barracks inspections, right? You could potentially have all these barracks inspections. They're not supposed to do it too often because it hurts morale, but it is still a thing that does happen. Maybe it's monthly, maybe it's every other month, or in some cases, other units may do it weekly. But again, if you get too, consistent with doing barracks inspections, it can hurt morale sometimes. Because soldiers feel like that's invading their privacy, and it sucks because you're constantly having to have someone come in and maybe nitpick things or whatever. And yes, you should be keeping your barracks room clean in the first place, but it still sucks having someone come in and go through your stuff, check things out, nitpick little things here and there. They can kind of get around that with health and welfare inspections because barracks inspections usually require some kind of like heads up, like, hey, on Friday we're gonna be doing a barracks inspection at this time. Where at health and welfare, they can just show up when they want to and they're checking on your health and your welfare. Things like to make sure that, you didn't have time to like hurry up and get rid of that person you're holding captive, or hide the drugs, or hide, the mold that's building up, around where your food's at or something crazy like that. So they do these random ones to make sure that you didn't have a chance to hide things that they may need to bring up as a concern. That also still falls in the category of where they're not supposed to do health and welfare too often because it still hurts morale because it's, invading their privacy. But that is something that should happen, at a certain kind of time frame, maybe every other month, every month, maybe whatever the case might be for their unit, to make sure the soldiers aren't living in conditions that could be harmful to themselves, harmful to someone else, or something along those lines. Technically, they could go and inspect off-post or on-post housing. More so with on-post housing. It's a little tricky with off-post housing, especially like your spouse is civilian. They can deny that. They can be like, no, I don't want anybody in my private area and checking stuff out or whatever. So no, you can't come in my house, and they can't do anything about that. Technically, they can on-post housing. It's pretty rare. I've heard of it in a few cases, but it's still a pretty rare thing. But they could technically say that, hey, we're gonna be doing an inspection on the soldiers in the barracks as well as the soldiers that live on post, and they can technically do that if they want to. But again, on-post housing inspections are a little bit more rare. Another pro being a single soldier, your leadership has to let you have the opportunity to go to chow, to get food. That is because single soldiers don't get paid extra, right? For BAS, for BAH, all that kind of stuff for, your housing and for your food, where the married soldiers do. So the married soldiers, they can go get food whenever they want because they get paid extra to supply them with that food. Single soldiers do not receive that extra pay. They have to go to the chow hall. They can use their money out of their pocket, out of their base pay if they want to, but for the most part, their opportunities to get food comes from the chow hall that is provided to them, and it's only open during certain hours. So if they are not able to go get chow during those hours, now they have to spend money out of their pocket. So leaders are required to give them an opportunity to get food. That doesn't mean that they have to give them an hour, they have to give them 2 hours, they have to give them 30 minutes. No, they have to provide them with an opportunity. That could come from, hey, go grab something from the chow hall, get it in a to-go plate, and come right back. That's still giving them an opportunity to get food. They could even technically want to give them an MRE, but a lot of times people just don't carry MREs with them all the time. They might have some leftover ones from the field, but that may only last for one specific day or a couple of days or something like that. But it's not going to be a scenario where they have a stockpile of MREs in their office, or they shouldn't, I wouldn't think. But they're not going to have like a stockpile of MREs and they're just going to make soldiers eat MREs for a whole week straight when they're not even in the field. When you're in the field, yeah, that definitely could be a thing. You're in the field, you maybe have a hot breakfast and hot dinner, depending on your situation of the training environment, and then you have to use an MRE for lunch. There are some cases where it's just straight MRE for maybe a week or whatever the case might be for the exercise, but that's still providing them with a chance to eat, even for the married soldiers and single soldiers. But for the single soldiers, when you're not in a field environment, you have to provide them an opportunity to go get some food, whether that's real quick or an hour or whatever the case is. You have to provide them with an opportunity. If they miss chow, they can technically put in a form for like a missed meal form, and they can get paid with that amount that they missed out on. So it's like $3, $5 or something like that. It can add up if it was multiple times, but that's also going to bring a lot of attention to your leadership as to why aren't you just letting the soldier go to the chow hall, get something to eat, and come back? So leadership has to provide you an opportunity where married soldiers, they don't have to do that to them. Kind of in relation to that, single soldiers make less money because they're not receiving BAS and BAH. Unless you're a single soldier that's an officer or you're a single soldier that is higher ranking, then sure, you're receiving that stuff. But you're new in the Army, you're a private, you're an E2, whatever the case might be, and you're single, you're not receiving BAS or BAH. There are a few instances where you can at that rank, maybe depending on where you're stationed at, certain MOSs sometimes because they work crazy hours, so they don't have opportunities to go to the chow hall during normal times. But outside of those, certain few exceptions, for your most part, your average soldier, your higher percentage of single soldiers are not going to receive BAS and BAH. So they just make simply base pay. There's other things that factor in, sure, if they're in a combat zone, if they're making jump pay or whatever, but let's say just your normal unit, let's say on Fort Carson, for example, that's not an airborne unit, not deployed, all you're getting is base pay. Whereas those same soldiers that are married are getting BAS and BAH. So they're making better money, right? That money has to get used for, paying rent and utilities and everything. Single soldiers, they live in the barracks, they don't have that stuff, so you're making less money. That one also ties into the next one, which is a pro, less responsibility. And for some people that may be good, and for some people that may still be bad though too. So this one could be both a pro or a con, I guess, depending on what side of the fence you are on or what side of the, equation you're looking at it, from or whatever. But, less responsibility as in you don't have rent to pay, you don't have utilities to pay, you don't have to deal with certain things like a landlord or things like that. So you have a little bit less responsibility in some areas. So that definitely means like if it's summertime and it's hot and you want to leave the AC running in the barracks room 24/7, crank that thing up to like 68 degrees to keep it nice and cool inside there, you can do that and it's not going to matter. It's not going to, reflect on a utility bill, where it will for those married soldiers who live like off post or something like that. If they do the same thing, they're going to end up with a larger utility bill. Don't have to worry about that in the barracks, so you can leave the lights on, you can do whatever. There's no utility bill, so you have that nice thing. You don't have to worry about like rent changing, right? You don't have that responsibility of, making sure that if, the rent changes and you can't afford it, now you gotta move somewhere else, or maybe they're gonna be doing renovations on that apartment complex you're living in, so you have to move out, all that kind of thing. You could have situations, I guess, where they're renovating the barracks and they'll move you to another barracks room, but still not in the same lines of what it's like when you're a married soldier at the responsibility level of taking care of that apartment, taking care of that house, or whatever the case could be. Like I said, it could be a pro, it could be a con, it just depends on the situation. I think in some cases it could be a con because you don't learn those life skills of how to manage money properly, to make sure you have money for the rent and the utilities and everything else that comes with living outside of the barracks and everything. But in some instances, maybe it's just a nice kind of relaxing thing of, hey, this is one thing I have to not worry about, and I'll worry about it a little bit later and learn those skills maybe as I rank up or something. Now, one last one, which is a con, is that in certain cases, single soldiers are lower on the priority for like maybe getting sent back home from a training environment or a deployment or something like that in some cases. The way that kind of factors in is especially like with like a training situation where if there's something where they have to train for more than 30 days, married soldiers have to receive separation pay. If they're trying to cut that short to try to avoid having to put in the paperwork to have soldiers get paid separation pay, and they're trying to cut it at like 25 days, 28 days or whatever and get people back home, they may send back those married soldiers first to try to avoid that. Maybe not all of them, but maybe a good proportion of them, and then keep a lot of the single soldiers, if not all of the single soldiers, whatever the case might be from the unit, because they don't have to pay them separation pay. Also, it factors in because, maybe they want those married soldiers to get back to their families that they have back home. So they have maybe children, a spouse, or whatever the case is. They want to try to get them back home because these single soldiers are just going back to an empty barracks room. So it's not as big of a priority on their list to send them back early. Not always the case, but there are some situations where you'll find yourself in that situation. You're a single soldier, so you're a little bit lower on the priority as far as who they want to send home, who they want to send back from this deployment, from this training environment. Other situations too where they will prioritize married individuals over the single soldiers because those married individuals have families that they're returning to, where those single soldiers are just returning to an empty barracks room. Doesn't matter if you have a girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever the case is, they don't really care too much about that stuff. People that are in that married status have that priority in some cases. Now, some people will say that, being in the military, you're single soldiers, so you're gonna live this big, crazy, lifestyle as far as, women flocking to you because you're in the military or whatever the case is, and that's not necessarily true. Sure, there may be some soldiers that have some kind of situations where it does seem like women are more interested in them, and that could be based on a lot of other factors. It may not be necessarily because they're in the military, because they're a person in uniform. Some women, sure, they like to see a person in uniform, but often, just being in the military isn't something that someone's chasing after unless maybe they're trying to look to take advantage of you for the benefits. Maybe they have good intentions. Maybe they feel like people in the military are better at responsibilities or certain other things, but most of the people that are specifically targeting people in the military probably for bad intentions because they want to use them for the benefits or something along those lines. But if you see some kind of increase in, women interested in you, and I say specifically women because it's not a common thing that men are interested in girls in the military in a lot of cases, at least not a large percentage like it is for the other way around. So it's not probably because you're in the military. It's probably because maybe you have more confidence. Maybe you have more confidence being in the military. Maybe you're already an attractive individual anyways, and now that confidence is just reflected differently than before you're in the military. So now you're, having more women interested in you or more individuals interested in you because you have better confidence and you're an attractive person. But being in the military solely, if you were someone who really struck out with the ladies, the men, whatever the case was, joining the military isn't necessarily, because you're in the military, going to increase that. So holding off and staying single because of that isn't a good reason to just stay single. It's fine to join the Army as a married individual. I feel like it's okay. I feel like, make sure you do it for the right reasons. Don't do it just because you want the benefits of getting out of the barracks and getting the extra pay and everything. Do it for all the proper reasons and everything like that. But make sure your relationship is strong. Maybe if you're someone who joins the military as a single soldier and you get really serious with someone and you're thinking about marriage, right? Make sure it's survived some tests. You've been able to go to the field for a couple weeks or whatever, and it survived that. You've been able to work some long hours and it survived that. And then kind of start factoring in, is it right for me to get married? Don't just do it because you're tired of the barracks. For my individuals out there that are currently in the Army, the military, veterans, whatever the case might be, what are some other pros and cons you can think of as to being single in the Army, or even some pros and cons to being married in the Army? I'd love to hear them down in the comment section down below, so hit that up, check out the comment section. Now, I have an older video that I did about the lifestyle of being a single soldier in the Army, and if you have not seen that video, highly recommend it. Check it out right there. My latest upload available right here if you have not seen that one already. I have links down in the description to include affiliate links for goat guns. These things are fun to put together. They make cool little desk ornaments and everything like that. Plus social media, all sorts of other stuff. So check out the links down in the description. I'm ChristopherChaos. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you next time. See ya.